Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Scharf Show here on 99.1 FM WIUX. I am your host, Josh Scharf, and we had spring break last week here in Indiana University, so we did not have a radio show, but we've had a lot going on this past 2 weeks of sports. We did have some NBA action. We got some NHL action, but I think those are going to be put to the side a bit. We got the World Baseball Classic that we're going to get to. We got the NFL offseason that we have to get to. But if I look at the month correctly, it is March. Because that comes after February. January, February, March. And what is March known for? March Madness. So that is what we are going to jump right into, is March Madness. And I'll tell you what, we never got to my bracket as the brackets were announced that Sunday, right before the tournament, obviously, and we were on spring break, so I never got the opportunity to share my bracket. Probably for the better. My bracket is completely busted. There was two teams I liked going into the tournament, obviously, besides the team I was rooting for. That was Marquette Golden Eagles and Kansas State. They happened to be put in the same region. I went Marquette, and they lost to Michigan State. So now I like Kansas State, but those are my two favorites that are not the one seeds going into this tournament that I really liked. And one of them already lost. I had Arizona get into the Elite Eight. I had Kansas get into the Final Four, or the Elite Eight, I believe. The Elite Eight. So my bracket's already busted. But I do want to talk about, before we get to the entire bracket, in last night's game, it's the Indiana Hoosiers. Their season comes to an end. They lose to the Miami Hurricanes by final score of 85-69. And while that says it's a 16-point game, it kind of got out of hand towards the end of the game, really. So this game was frustrating because they were missing Miami was missing their best big man, and they did not have a player play who was over the height of 6'8". So Trace Jackson Davis, Race Thompson, they had one actually. AJ Casey, the freshman off the bench, was listed at 6'9", but none of their starters who played significant minutes, as Casey only played 5 minutes this game. None of their guys who played over 10 minutes was over 6'8". Which, when you read that, you should say, oh, this is going to be a great day for Trace Jackson Davis, for Race Thompson, for Malik Renew, as they can feast on the height difference. They can really dominate the glass. And that's what I thought was going to happen. But instead, it was kind of quite the opposite. Trace dominated, don't get me wrong. Trace still had a decent game. He got his 20 points. He had 8 rebounds, 23 points, 5 blocks again, as he had 5 blocks against Kent State. But the reason why they lost this game, first off, you got to give credit to credit was due. Player Isaiah Wong for the Miami Hurricanes was absolutely awesome this game. He was hitting threes from every direction, from the line all the way very deep. He hit one at the logo, which really, I think, was the nail in the coffin in this game. He played fantastic, ended with 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 steal. He was very good this game. 4 of 6 from 3, 5 of 5 from the line. He really had it going this game. The problem, for me at least, was the offensive rebounds and the points they got from the offensive rebounds. Miami got 20 offensive rebounds, and they had over 20 points from it. Over 20 points from the second chance points. And that really hurt us, or this Hoosiers team. How does somebody with those kind of height difference beat you to the glass, on the defensive glass. It doesn't make sense, really. A team like that should not be able to out-rebound you. And it's not, offensive rebounds are hard to come by. So if we couldn't get a lot of offensive rebounds, maybe they're just a very good box-out team and they put a lot of effort in. So be it. But these are defensive rebounds. That's all about effort. That's all about just boxing out. And I don't know. It's been a decent problem throughout the year, and I don't know why. I still can't figure it out, even after watching some highlights after the game ended. I just don't understand how it was such a big issue. And that was the biggest takeaway. That was the one thing that beat us, or beat this Hoosiers team. Really. The three-pointers, I understand Jalen Hood-Schifino, who did not have a great game at all. Even though he ended with 19, he hit 3 three-pointers late. And those are the only three-pointers he hit. He was he was only 8 for 22 on the day, 3 of 11 from the three-point line. Just wasn't very good from he had one of his worst days, really, shooting the ball-wise. And he took 22 shots. So even with that, Hoosiers dropped 69 points, which is not bad for a NCAA game. These are good. March Madness games are tight. You're not scoring 80, 90 points in these games. So it's just so frustrating for this, because this is a team that I thought they matched up well against, especially with their big guy Hurt. I thought we could move the ball against them. I thought you could get to the paint. You can take advantage of the size and kick it out for threes when they collapse on Trace or Race or Malik. But the defensive rebounds I did not think would be that big of a problem, getting them, allowing second chance points for the Hurricanes. And that is the biggest thing. You could point to other things. Again, like I said, Jalen Hood-Schifino did not have a great day. Tamar Bates shot 7 times and went 0 of 7 from the field. Obviously did not have a good day at all. I thought Geronimo should have got a shot. He didn't play. It's just the little things that really, really did not go well. And ultimately, those weren't the biggest things, though. It was the offensive rebounds. And seeing that is just an effort thing was quite frustrating, because this was a team that I thought could really do some damage and really make a run here in this tournament. So to see Trace Jackson Davis's career end like that was really tough. Obviously, one of the greatest IU players in history. I wish him nothing but the best. Hopefully he makes some damage in the NBA. Needs to work on maybe a little bit of outside shooting if he wants to make it in the professional league with these big guys like Giannis and LeBron and KD. He's going to need to develop more of a shot in the NBA, but wish him nothing but the best. It was an honor to watch him play. One of the greatest IU players of all time, but to see him never make a Sweet 16 is quite frustrating. Very, very frustrating. But we will move on to the rest of the tournament, as Indiana is not the only team in this tournament. And we had some pretty big upsets the first 2 rounds. And we're going to talk about probably, first off quickly, the greatest upset in NCAA March Madness history. In history. That's because Fairleigh Dickinson, 16 seed, beat number 1 Purdue. Down goes Purdue. This was only the second time a 1 seed had fallen. It is the second time in 5 years, as it happened to Virginia in the last 5 years. But it's only the second time in history as well that a 1 seed has lost in the first round. And it was a bigger upset than the USBC, or I'm pretty sure it was USBC, or UMBC versus Virginia, because Fairleigh Dickinson had to play in the first 4, so they won 2 games actually in this tournament so far for them after losing in the round of 32 to Florida FAU. They won 2 games, which has never happened before. The UMBC did not have to win in the first 4. And number 2, they didn't even win their conference. Merrimack won their conference, but they haven't been in Division I long enough to make the tournament. So they got the bid instead of Merrimack. So this wasn't even the best team in their conference, and the fact that they go up, they are the smallest team in NCAA, in Division I college basketball, and they take on the giant in Zach Edey and Purdue, and they beat them, was crazy. And I think a lot of people thought that Purdue's downfall would be their inexperience at the guard position from both guards being freshmen, having no real experience in college basketball, no experience in the tournament. That was going to be their downfall. People didn't think it would come in the first round. I had them losing to Memphis in the round of 32 in a pretty big upset. But not a lot of people had them going to the Final Four. But I would have never expected this. And seeing that was kind of crazy. Seeing how they really rallied to guard Edey, 4 shots from the freshmen who really struggled. Their entire team struggled from the field, especially from the three-point line. And Fairleigh Dickinson had big players make big plays and stepped up. And, luck was on their side. Everything was kind of going their way. They were hitting the shots Purdue wasn't. And they were playing their hearts out. And ultimately, they ended up on top at the end of the game, which was an awesome sight to see. When the 16 seed wins, I've seen it twice now. The only 2 times it ever happens, I've seen them both because it's happened in the 5 years. Awesome games. And it shows you how more balanced college basketball is becoming, I think. Because if you look 20 years ago, I think there was a lot less upsets than there are now. I mean, you see so many upsets. A 5-12, you have to pick at least one 12 seed to win almost every year now, probably 2. How it goes. I don't think a 12 seed didn't win this year, which is crazy. But a 4 seed, a 4 seed, 1 4 seed loss in Virginia. I'm looking throughout. UConn did not lose any. So 1 4 seed loss, a 2 seed loss in Arizona. That was crazy to Princeton. And then Princeton then beats Missouri, so Princeton's in the Sweet 16. That was pretty crazy. This has just been a crazy tournament in general. But enough of the upsets. Let me go through what I think is going to happen the rest of the tournament. We'll start in the South. We got Alabama and San Diego State. I think San Diego State has had a very good draw with Charleston and Furman in their first 2 games. I like San Diego State. They got a lot of experience on that team, but I just think they're going to be too much. Alabama's going to be way too much for them. I have them advancing to the Elite Eight. Then you got Creighton, Princeton. Princeton making one of the greatest runs in probably their college history, in NCAA history, for a 15 seed to get to the Sweet 16. St. Peter's obviously got to the Elite Eight last year, but I think this will be the end of Princeton's run against Creighton, who's a very good dark horse team to go very far in this tournament. So I will take Creighton there to win that game. FAU versus Tennessee. I actually don't think it's ridiculous to pick FAU. I kind of think Tennessee, even though they had a very good game against Duke, I'm not huge on them for some reason. But ultimately, I'm still probably going to take Tennessee to win this game. Then you got Kansas State against Michigan State. Michigan State with the big upset against Marquette, who I had in my bracket, which was a shot to the chest for me. But I told you at the beginning, the 2 teams I liked in this tournament that I loved, besides Indiana, of course, was Kansas State and Marquette. So I'm going to pick Kansas State to win this game. They really got out-rebounded against Kentucky, and they still won this game. Their 2 guards coming up with big shots. Big 3-pointers at the end. I love their guard play. They can do a lot. Coming from the Big 12, which is the best conference in basketball, I think they take Tom Izzo out and this Michigan State team to advance to the Elite Eight. Then you got Houston and Miami. I don't think Miami will have the rebounding it did against Indiana. I don't think that's gonna happen against Houston. I think Houston will be able to control the glass a little bit more, and ultimately, for that reason, I'm going to have Houston moving on, as they will not be able to get their second chance points like they did against Indiana. Then you got Texas and Xavier. I like Texas to move on here. I think Xavier doesn't match well against Texas. Texas had a bit of a scare against Penn State. I think that was probably pretty good for them to get tested a little bit early on. I love this Texas team. Very experienced, again, winning the Big 12. A lot of seniors on that team can kind of do it all. Interim head coach, which is kind of crazy after Chris Beard left. He's done a great job. I have them advancing to the Elite Eight. Then you got Arkansas and UConn. I like an upset here in Arkansas to get to the Elite Eight here. This Arkansas team has been playing very good. They took out Kansas. They took out Illinois. They are red hot. And while I like this UConn team, I think you got to ride a couple upsets here still. And UConn is one of the Arkansas is one of the hotter teams. I like Arkansas here. Then Gonzaga, UCLA. I love this UCLA team. Jaime Jaquez, I think is one of the best players in college basketball. I know they got Drew Timme on the other side, but I think that UCLA is a more complete team. Give me UCLA. Then we'll move on. We got Alabama, Creighton. I'm going to take Alabama in that one to advance to the Final Four. Then Kansas State versus Tennessee. Give me Kansas State in that one. Then you got Houston versus Texas. Give me Texas to move on out of the Midwest. And then UCLA versus Arkansas. Give me UCLA to advance out of the West. Excuse me. Then in your Final Four, I'd have Alabama, Kansas State, Texas, and UCLA. Then I would have in the finals, I would have UCLA versus Kansas State. And then, Jesus, I am sneezing a bunch here. Maybe it's the pollen is coming, springtime, but you'd think the weather would be a little bit nicer. But anyway, I have Kansas State ultimately winning it all against UCLA. I told you I love this Kansas State team and what they bring to the table, and I'm going to continue to ride that until they are eliminated. All right, when we come back, March Madness, we've talked about it, but we have not talked about NFL free agency and all the big news that has come out since it has opened. We'll get to all of that when we come back here on the Scharf Show, 99.1 FM, WIUX. All right, welcome back to the Scharf Show here on 99.1 FM, WIUX. And NFL free agency started last week. You had deals could be talked about with tampering rights being kind of turned off. The 13th and then the 15th, everything was could get finalized. And now, with it being the date, what date is it again? It is the 20th today. We've had a lot going on for the past week, at least. Deals have been going on since last Monday. So, we'll go over some of the big things first, and then we'll give my 3 winners so far of the free agency this year. The biggest signing, the number one guy on the board, has to be Lamar Jackson. And while he's technically not signed, he is non-exclusive franchise tag with the Ravens. Still remains unsigned. I don't see any way he doesn't go back to the Ravens, because I think nobody's going to give him the guaranteed contract of all the guaranteed money he's looking for. And if they don't, if somehow he signs that when he's not all guaranteed, Ravens will match that. So he'll go back to the Ravens. If they do give him it, he'll leave, but I don't think anybody's giving that to him. So I think that was such a big win for the Ravens, the fact that they were able to kind of force Lamar, I guess, to kind of see the market, but know that they're still going to get him back and kind of lower his expectations a bit. I thought that was kind of a pretty good move by the Ravens. But the biggest signing was Javon Hargrave coming over from Philadelphia. Now he's with the 49ers. He signs a big deal with the San Francisco to beef up their defense. And he's an awesome defensive lineman, pass rusher, 92.2% pass rush grade on PFF with an 18.8 win percent rate. He is 30, but interior defensive players, we've seen them last into their 30s. So I think this just makes this Niners defense that much challenging. Bosa, Warner, Hargrave. This Niners defense continues to beef up, and I know they lost a couple pieces on the back end and a linebacker, but this for sure makes up for it, and he's going to be a force up front. Then you got Jesse Bates, the safety from the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, he goes to the Atlanta Falcons. He is a very good safety for the Bengals, and I think he'll fit in well with the Falcons. The timeline there, I don't know how it's going to work, as they're not really contenders right now. So, but he gets a nice payday. Falcons get a very cornerstone piece on their defense to go for a long way, and a pretty big loss for the Bengals. Levante David re-signed with the Buccaneers. That was a big re-signing for them as they're trying to keep that defense at least reasonably together. And Levante David, one of the best off-ball linebackers of this generation. Maybe not playing at that elite level anymore, but still playing very high level. Just like a Demario Davis and Bobby Wagner in their 30s, still playing very, very good football. Still can cover, still can pass rush, really. Good against the run, good against the pass. Jacoby Myers, he goes to the Las Vegas Raiders on a 3-year deal. And he'll pair up with Adams and Renfro. And while he's probably the best wide receiver on the market, I didn't really get this from the Raiders' perspective, because I feel like he's a very similar fit to Hunter Renfro. And I know you have the McDaniels-Myers situation, but I figured I didn't really get the fit there. That's all I'm saying. We'll see how it plays out, but I didn't really get the fit. It's also funny that Myers was the one who was responsible for the craziest play with the throwing back the pass for the Patriots that lost them the game. That was against the Raiders, for the Raiders to win, and now he's on the Raiders. Kind of funny how that turns out. And then you got some of the big quarterbacks. Derek Carr ultimately signed with the Saints. Big year deal. We talked about that before. And then Geno Smith re-signed with the Seattle Seahawks on a 3-year deal. I think it was pretty obvious that they were going to keep him. It was going to be hard for him to get the amount of money that he probably wanted somewhere else. Plus, if the Seahawks, after 1 year, they don't really like where it's going, they can always, draft a quarterback and use him as a bridge. It might be a bit of an expensive bridge, but he earned that title. Now we're going to go over the winners of free agency, and the first winner has to be the Chicago Bears. First off, before free agency opened up, they had a pretty big trade that happened a couple days before that, and that was that they traded the first overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. In exchange, they got a lot. They got the 9th overall pick, a 2023 second rounder, the 61st overall, a 2024 first, a 2025 second, and DJ Moore, wide receiver. This was an absolute win for the Bears. The Panthers, I feel like instead of giving up more, you could have given up another first, and I feel like it kind of would have been an even trade. But to give up more and all those picks, it was a lot. The Bears get their number 1 wide receiver. They're going to get somebody good at the 9th overall. They had a second rounder and another first rounder as well. They really got a lot of good pieces here in that. Then in free agency, they signed Donta Foreman, which I really like, for a 1-year, 3-year deal to package with Khalil Herbert as a 1-2 punch. I really like that. I think giving him Herbert a bigger role and then having somebody like Foreman really be like the second running back, very good deal. They signed Robert Tonyan, the former tight end from the Packers. That's another solid weapon who was kind of inconsistent this year, but has been pretty reliable for Aaron Rodgers when he was on the Packers. And of course, speaking of Aaron Rodgers, the reason why we haven't talked about him because technically nothing is final. So, but he is reportedly he's probably 90% of chance if he plays he's going to the Jets, which would be absolutely huge. We'll talk about that towards the end. but we'll mention that. That's why we haven't. I didn't touch on him just yet. But the Bears also signed T.J. Edwards on a 3-year, $19.5 million deal, $12 million guaranteed from the Eagles. I thought this was an absolute bargain and a half to really improve their linebacking core. And they also signed Tremaine Edmonds for a 4-year, $72 million deal, $50 million guaranteed. That one questions me a bit. I like Tremaine Edmonds. I like him a lot. Would have loved to have him on the Giants. Not for that price. But the reason why this is questionable for me is because why, if you wanted to sign a linebacker like that, why wouldn't you go keep Roquan Smith? Roquan Smith is a better linebacker, and he costs you, I think, only $2 million a year more and an extra year. I just don't understand why you would sign him for that kind of money, Edmonds, instead of not, when you could have kept Roquan Smith for a very similar deal. Kind of doesn't make too much sense to me, but we'll see how it goes. But otherwise, this is a slam dunk off-season for them, getting all these guys, really rebuilding their team and using all their cap space and weaponizing it, really pushing forward as they're going to be a sneaky team coming into next year. The next winner I have is also in the same division as the Chicago Bears. And that, my friends, is the Detroit Lions. I love what the Lions did. They signed David Montgomery to a 3-year, $18 million deal. He'll pair up with Swift, so he replaces Jamal Williams. I think David Montgomery is a very tough, hard-nosed runner, very underrated in this league. I think him and Swift is going to be a great duo. But my favorite signing from them happened only yesterday, and that's C.J. Gardner-Johnson signing for a 1-year, $8 million deal. One of the best safeties in the game. It is an absolute, flies all over the field, and will really going to help that defense, which is kind of their problem last year. They also signed C.J. Moore to a 2-year, $4.5 million deal, so they got their 2 safeties now. They also signed Cam Sutton, cornerback, to a 3-year, $33 million deal, so really turning over and rebuilding that entire secondary room, which was probably their biggest problem last year. Huge for the Lions. I really love what they did. I really think they could do some damage going into next year. And the last team that I have that won this offseason so far, how about the New York Football Giants? And I'm not trying to be much of a biased, but they re-signed Daniel Jones. They tagged Saquon Barkley. They signed Sterling Shepard to a 1-year deal on a $1.3 million deal. They trade for Darren Waller. You needed a big-time target. You get a big-time target. And Darren Waller exchanged for a 3rd-round pick, 100th overall, in which they got for Kadarius Toney. So it's basically Toney for Waller. I'll take that any day. Waller is a great pass-catching tight end. He just got to stay healthy. He does have a bit of a cap hit, but none of his salary for going forward is guaranteed. So it is a great value, great thing to bet on him, because if he continues to, unfortunately, not be able to stay healthy, you can cut ties. But that becomes easily Daniel Jones' best weapon and somebody who could really, really change the game on the offensive side of the ball. And the other big position they addressed, they did sign some other wide receivers like Darius Slayton. They signed to a 2-year, $12 million deal. They got Paris Campbell on a 1-year, $4 million deal. So kind of bringing back some pieces, adding Paris Campbell, and then getting Darren Waller to really help get some weapons for Daniel Jones. And on the defensive end, getting a linebacker that they so desperately need, Bobby Arikie from the Colts on a 4-year, $40 million deal. Guy is very good at stopping the run, going downfield. Is okay in the passing game, but with the Colts system, everything was in front of them, so it's hard to tell how good he is in the pass, but decent enough in the pass, can really help out a position of need, and a nice contract. You help with the weapons, you get your big pieces re-signed, and then you go get a linebacker. Very good job by Joe Shade, and I expect him to go after a cornerback in the draft. Those are my 3 winners. I think there are a couple losers. I think one of them was the Philadelphia Eagles. Not trying to be biased, but they just lost so many pieces. It was going to be hard for them to keep everybody. They did do a good job bringing back Graham, Fletcher Cox, and both their cornerbacks in Bradbury and Slay. But losing Hargrave, losing T.J. Edwards, losing a guard. Why am I blanking on his name? But the guard they lost. They've lost a lot of pieces. And I think it was just hard to re-sign. They were never going to re-sign anybody, so it's hard to not call them losers. But there's the other big thing that hasn't happened so far yet, which would make them winners, is the Jets. And that is with Aaron Rodgers. If they get Aaron Rodgers, it becomes a huge, huge offseason for the New York Jets. They already signed a bunch of players in Alan Lazard. They got, they're looking to get Randall Cobb. I don't know, that's not confirmed yet. They re-signed Solomon Thomas. They acquired Chuck Clark. They did some pretty good things, and if they get Aaron Rodgers, this team is super dangerous. You know, they're bringing back, so their wide receiver core will be Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, probably either Corey Davis or maybe Elijah Moore. We'll see what happens there. But if they get Rodgers, huge win for them. If they don't, though, huge loss for them, is now they're kind of scrambling to find somebody or trade for somebody that could really fill in and be the stopgap for that QB. So to see the Jets in limbo is kind of weird. See a team held hostage like they are. That's the thing that happens a lot in the NBA. But in the NFL, it doesn't really happen too often. So it's kind of weird. But if the Jets ultimately do get Rodgers, which looks like it's going to happen, they will definitely be big winners of this off season. And yeah, we still got still some big names still available in free agency, just like an Odell Beckham Jr., Ezekiel Elliott, who's cut. So there's still some big names here in free agency. I'm excited to see where they land, and we'll talk about it when it comes up. But when we come back, we'll be talking the World Baseball Classic. How about Team USA advancing to the finals? We'll talk about them when we come back on the Scharf Show at 99.1 FM, WIUX. Alright, welcome back to the Scharf Show here on 99.1 FM, WIUX. And the United States baseball team are heading to the World Baseball Classic Finals. They beat Cuba last night by a score of 14-2, an absolute beatdown by the United States team. Ultimately, going down 1-0 in the first, pitcher Adam Wainwright was really in some trouble with the base load, nobody outs. Lets in a walk for the first run, then gets out of a huge jam, letting up only one run. They turn around, Goldschmidt homers in the bottom of the inning to make it 2-1, and from there, the USA just ran away with it, made it 7-1 at one point. The Cuba would answer back to make it 7-2, and then ultimately all the way up to 14-2 for the United States. And this has not been as dominant as one would have thought, as this lineup has. This lineup is great. The lineup is a very dominant lineup. I mean, Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Schwarber, Will Smith, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Tim Anderson, Trey Turner, Cedric Mullins, Bobby Witt Jr. This lineup is stacked every way you look at it. Problem is the pitching. You don't have any of the big pitchers from this team playing. You got Lance Lynn, Adam Wainwright, Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly is going to start in the championship game. This is not Corbin Burns, Jacob deGrom, Justin Verlander. The big guys aren't here. So it's kind of showing a problem, as the United States almost was eliminated, as they got crushed by Mexico. Randy Arozarena did damage to this team, and they really, it didn't look good for a second. It really didn't. They needed a little bit of help, and then they got it, and then they were able to, once they were able to control their own destiny and beat Canada, and then beat, who's the last team they beat? They beat the last team in their way. They were ultimately able to advance, and they ultimately played Venezuela 2 days ago, and they won that one, beating that was a lot closer game against Jose Altuve's team. to advance to the finals. This has not been a cakewalk for the United States, by no stretch of the imagination. This has been a tough road for them a bit. You know, they've had some ups and downs, and I think that helps them a bit along their road. Is it provides, especially with such limited time to really get there. As the final score for that Venezuela game was 9-7. You know, they were down in that game. They were down in that game all the way up to the 8th. You know, Luis Arias homered in the 7th to make it 5-7. Venezuela went on the run in the 5th, which ultimately Acuna had a sacrifice fly to put them up. You know, Salvador Perez tied it, and they were down 5-7 into the 8th. You know, the U.S. loads the bases, and then Trey Turner probably hits the biggest home run in USA baseball history, or at least one of the biggest. Pimp job by him, absolutely destroys that baseball, gives the States the lead, and they ultimately close it out. But this is going to be a tough game. They're probably going to face Japan. You don't know. They play Mexico, or I believe they play Mexico right now in the finals. Yeah, in the semifinals. That's gonna be a great game. You know, Japan hasn't lost yet. They take this tournament very seriously. It is so important for them in Japan, pride of their country, especially in the game of baseball. So this is going to be a great game. Mexico has gotten very good, very clutch hitting. They've put up a lot of runs. And Japan has not lost yet, just stomping every team. Italy, 9-3. Australia, 7-1. Czech, 10-2. Korea, 13-4. China, 8-1. They haven't faced a awesome team yet, but this is a team that is scary. You know, Shohei Ohtani's been doing damage. He's hitting above 400 so far in this tournament, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll be watching a bit of that. The Japan game tonight, Japan-Mexico, and I'll definitely be watching the USA tomorrow. But this is something I feel it's been getting a lot of criticism, considering Edwin Diaz got hurt, Jose Altuve got hurt, and for people saying it's not important. If you look at the baseball players, if you look at the players playing, it's important to them. It's important to represent their country. And I do think this is an important tournament. And I do think you're not going to be able to take this away. To be able to represent your country on the biggest stage, it means something to people. It means something to these players to show their pride for their country and to win something not just for the team they play for, but for the country that raised them, the country that they are from, that they grew up in, where they have family in. So it means a lot for people saying it's meaningless. And while I don't like the timing of it, I think this is kind of exactly what you want it to be. This is great for baseball. It really spreads the game a bit more. Gives a bit more countries a different bit of looks. Like, you know, how often is Mexico talking about baseball? And it's pretty big there right now. So I do think this is big for the game of baseball. I would move it a bit towards the middle of the offseason, so maybe around December, January I'd have this tournament. So if somebody gets a little bit nicked up, they can come back, and it could be towards the end of closer to the end of the season instead of the beginning of the next season. So maybe like December through like January, I think I would probably do it. That would be, I think, the best time to do this tournament. I think March, February is not the greatest time to do this tournament. But I do think this tournament is important, and I do understand why people have so much love for this tournament. I understand why people are cautious. Injuries happen. I mean, if you look at the Olympics, you look at like FIBA with basketball, these things do happen, and it's unfortunate. Injuries do happen, but you know, representing your country is such an important thing for so many people and players and athletes. I just don't think you can take it away. But looking forward to the semi and finals of the World Baseball Classic. Looking forward to March Madness. Looking forward to more NFL free agency, NHL, NBA. A lot going on this next week. A lot to look forward to. A lot to watch. Not just the men's, by the way, March Madness. Women's March Madness. Indiana plays tonight against Miami. Again, they play Miami in the men's and women's, so hopefully they can go 1-1. I will definitely be watching that game as they have a big shot to go very far in this tournament. Mackenzie Holmes, Sydney Parrish, Grace Berger, awesome Indiana women's basketball team this year. Been to a couple games. It's been awesome. But yeah, So that'll be watching that tonight. There's so much sports going on. Hopefully you enjoy your sports week coming up. This has been the Josh Scharf from the Scharf Show, 99.1 FM, WIUX. I've been Josh Scharf. I will see you on the other side.